Hello guys, today I'll be speaking about the pyramidal tracts, which is part of the motor tracts of the CNS. We could divide the CNS into basically, in terms of the tracts, into two different types. Sensory, motor, with motor being autonomic nervous system, somatic nervous system, with somatic being extrapyramidal and pyramidal. The function of the extrapyramidal is basically to control posture and tone of extensors and flexors. So any disturbance in this would really result in loss of support of the gravity muscles, anti-gravity muscles, which is basically the shoulder girdle muscles, pelvic muscles, because they are basically the extensors and flexors of our body, which maintains the tone and posture. And the pyramidal tract is basically involved in voluntary control of muscle groups. It's voluntary, extrapyramidal is involuntary because it's tone and posture. Extrapyramidal consists of four different tracts: reticulospinal, vestibulospinal, tectospinal, rubrospinal. These are the tracts which controls extensors and flexors. Pyramidal tracts include corticospinal and corticonuclear tracts, which I will explain in the next slide. The corticospinal tract is basically a tract that begins at the level of the motor cortex, Brodmann areas 4, descends down at the level of internal capsule, forms the postural limb of the internal capsule, goes down the cerebral peduncle, crosses at the level of medulla oblongata, descends down, and innervates the spinal cord, technically the lower motor neuron part of the spinal cord. This crossing all derives the name of pyramidal. It always innervates the contralateral group of muscles. The crossing is formed basically by the lateral part of the corticospinal tract, which consists of 80% of the fibers. The ventral part of the spinal tract descends down and crosses at the level of spinal cord. Therefore, the net effect is contralateral innervation of muscles. So there are two concepts that I would really like to speak about. One is an anatomical concept, and one is the type of nerve involved concept. The anatomical concept says that, logically, if there is damage at the level of the medulla oblongata, the innervation at the level or above the level of MO, medulla oblongata, the group of muscles that would be affected would be contralateral, right? Technically. So if I damage the right corticospinal tract above the MO, my left group of muscles will be affected. However, if I damage the left MO, no, sorry, the left corticospinal tract below the medulla oblongata, my left muscles would be affected, which makes sense logically if you can look at the tract. The second concept I would really like to speak about is upper motor neuron lesion and lower motor neuron lesion. So, if we have damage at the level of spinal cord, that means the lower motor neuron, we technically have loss of innervation to the group of muscles. So, what will we see? We'll see flaccidity, loss of tone, uh, decreased deep tendon reflexes, and atrophy of the muscle because of disuse atrophy. However, if we have damage to the corticospinal tract, we'll have increased tone, spasticity, increased deep tendon reflex, and and presence of clasp knife reflex phenomenon. The next tract I would really like to talk about is the corticonuclear tract. One important concept about the corticonuclear tract is really it innervates all the cranial nerve nuclei bilaterally, which is pretty cool. So, if I damage the right corticonuclear tract, my cranial nerve 3, 9, 11, 10 would all be intact. Why? Because I have another corticonuclear tract coming and innervating it bilaterally. So really there's no loss of weakness because we have a compensatory mechanism. However, the problem really begins in two different nerves. The great cranial nerve 7 and the great cranial nerve 12. So cranial nerve 7 is basically the facial nerve and cranial nerve 12 is the hypoglossal nerve. Okay? So the problem with this is our facial nerve has the facial nerve nucleus has two parts. The one which innervates the upper part of the face and the one that innervates the lower part of the face. The problem with this is innervated bilaterally. So technically, if your corticonuclear tract is destroyed, the upper face won't be affected because it's being compensated by the contralateral corticonuclear tract. However, the lower part of the face is innervated only contralaterally. That means by one cranial nerve, by one corticonuclear tract. The upper face is innervated by two corticonuclear tracts. The lower face is innervated by one corticonuclear tract. Therefore, if I damage the, let's say this is the right and this is the left. If I damage the left corticonuclear tract, I will have weakness. Sorry, let's say this is the right and this is the left. Yeah. If I damage the left corticonuclear tract, I will have weakness in my right side. Where in the right side? The lower part of the face of the right side. Why? Because the lower part of the face is innervated contralaterally by one corticonuclear tract. However, the upper part is innervated bilaterally. The same concept can be really taught in cranial nerve 12. Sorry. Again, cranial nerve 12 can be divided into, the nucleus can be divided into two types. The upper nucleus and the lower nucleus. Now, this is the genioglossus muscle. The function of the genioglossus muscle is basically it moves the tongue. The right genioglossus muscle helps to move the tongue to the left. The left genioglossus muscle helps the tongue to move to the right. Okay? The genioglossus muscle is innervated contralaterally, whereas the rest of the tongue is innervated bilaterally by the corticonuclear tract itself in terms of the nucleus. The tongue is obviously innervated ipsilaterally. So this also really it follows the same concept of cranial nerve 7. So let's imagine our hypoglossus nuclei, right, gives a fiber, gives a fiber, gives a fiber, gives a fiber. Yeah. And this is the corticonuclear tract. Sorry. Yeah. This goes here. This goes here. So basically, If we have damage to the upper motor neuron lesion, our tongue will move towards the side of the lesion. And if we have damage to the lower motor neuron lesion, lower motor neuron itself, our tongue moves away from the lesion. Why? Because of the presence of the genioglossus muscle, which really helps it move away from the lesion. Okay, that is it. So thank you for watching this presentation. I hope you understood the concepts. If you have any doubts, you can email me, in which I will enter my description. I'll enter my email in the description below. Thank you very much. Have a great day.